it's been a week of crises, chicanery and Chardonnay. Starmer literally scurried out of the chamber straight after PMQs. He is not safe. There is more scandals coming forward for him. Labour MPs have gone home so gloomy. It's curtains for them. This is the problem with Labour. They're going to be absolutely pummeled at those local elections is because they are out of touch.
Earlier, we mentioned reshuffles. Do you think there'll be one after local elections?
Starmer did the worst thing possible.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Expresso. We're with Esther McVey, Tory MP, and our very own Westminster Whisperer. What has this week been like?
Well, it's been a week of crises, chicanery and Chardonnay as MPs are basically partying over the demise of Starmer, and none more so than Angela Rayner, who was found sozzled in Stranger's Bar because obviously she's thinking it's her opportunity, and the bell ding ding has rung for all of those leadership contenders to go forth, particularly outside Parliament now, and this is Andy Burnham as well, has started his campaign and he thinks he's found the Labour MP to stand down so he can get that seat to come into Parliament. That Labour MP is meant to be Peter Dowd, the MP for Bootle, the sixth safest Labour seat, and it would have to be safe or he wouldn't win it. Peter's now 68, 69 in June. Maybe it will be. So it's everybody's up for the top job.
And Parliament was prorogued yesterday. That means the end of a parliamentary session.
Yes, it was. And Starmer literally scurried out of the chamber straight after PMQs, relieved that he survived this week, relieved he got through PMQs, and he actually left during what is a point of order. One of his MPs, John McDonnell, stood up saying, we need to have an investigation into this group called Labour Together, which basically funded Starmer to become Prime Minister and has got Mandelson's fingerprints all over it. So even though Starmer thinks he's got to this period of time, he's not coming back now until after the local elections, which are next week. He is not safe. There is more scandals coming forward for him.
And of course, there have been other things going on this week for Starmer, like a court case alleging a man offered Ukrainians money to carry out an arson attack on properties linked to the Prime Minister.
I can't tell you how many people have said to me, what's going on here? And you in the newsroom will know, and we can't talk about it just yet, but we will have to talk about this. I was stopped by one of the police in St James's Park saying, what is going on here? So it is strange, and we will discover that. And I think this is why Labour MPs have gone home so gloomy, so rattled, because they see it's all over. It's curtains for them. They see what is going to happen at this local election. So you've got the dark cloud of Mandelson still hanging over them. You've got the disaster of the local elections in front of them, and all around them are leadership bids.
And we're going to talk later about reshuffle rumours and Rachel Reeves.
Yes, but I think the key thing that happened as well this week in Parliament, which really showed how out of touch Labour is, and it is getting more out of touch. And these were other questions that happened in the House. And I will mention a couple, one or two here by Rupert Lowe, the independent MP for Great Yarmouth. And this is really about Benefit Britain. And he said, how is it that a staggering £10 billion out of the £61 billion that's spent on universal credit benefits was gifted to foreign nationals? And he said, look, what we need to do, and I'll give you the simple solution if you haven't got it to the minister. He said, I would ban all foreigners from claiming any benefits and remove those migrants from this country that can't support themselves and give that money back to those tax-paying Brits who are keeping the country afloat. And the reply from the Work and Pensions Minister, Andrew Weston, was, I fundamentally disagree with the perspective of the honourable gentleman. And that is completely out of touch of what the country is talking about. Fairness, what are we going to do? How are we spending so many billions to people who've broken into our country, immigrants, illegal or legal? What are we doing? So that, I think, was a fair point. And then Rupert Lowe asked another question, and this was to Bridget Phillipson. He said, women all over Britain, including in my constituency, feel intimidated and harassed on the high street by unacceptable behaviour. So his question to the minister was this: will she commit to a national audit? So just who are these people, basically? Who's doing this harassment, intimidation, sexual offending, and will she do it by nationality and immigration status so the British people can know what is going on? Bridget Phillipson, which I have to say, she's turned into Labour's enforcer, hasn't she? She's got this very harsh black helmet style hair. She's vitriolic. She's acidic. She's got no sort of sense, personality whatsoever. And her reply to him was, here we go again. I do not want to hear anything from him about violence against women and girls or harassment. Remember, this is the man I'm working with, Rupert Lowe, who did the independent rape gang inquiry, while supposedly Philip Bridgerton, who's the Women's and Equalities Minister, has done nothing. But for her to say that to him when he just said, can we have an audit? And she could have got on, got the upper hand there and said, yes, we will do that. Absolutely not. And I think this is the problem with Labour. Absolutely out of touch. So Mandelson, in a way, people might say, has been a distraction. Though it hasn't. It's gone to the core of the rot in Labour with that cronyism, but not listening to any of this, which are people's concerns. And a final one, which I'm going to, Claire Coutinho, the Conservative Energy Secretary of State, said, look, what we're going to do about a Muslim vote campaign, which is telling people how to vote depending on what God they pray to. Surely you've got to get involved with that, or we've got a divisive sectarianism in Britain. And her answer is, I'm fed up to the back teeth of the opposition coming up here time and time again, sowing division. Labour are so off the mark, and the reason they're going to be absolutely pummeled at those local elections is because they are out of touch with what the regular person in the UK is saying and thinking. And I'm afraid those questions from this week's set of questions in the House displayed it.
And there's one Labour MP who absolutely agrees with you. Emma Lewell, who's a champion of women and girls, spoke in the Commons during the debate on the Privileges Committee, and she described how people accuse her of being part of a pedo protector party. And in a brave and inspiring speech, she said, I feel the way that today's vote has been handled by the government smacks once again of being out of touch and disconnected from the public mood.
Yeah. So I get on with Emma Lewell, and actually before she gave that speech, because this was obviously a big speech, she was called first, and this was whether Starmer was going to go to the Privileges Committee, House Business, to say whether he had misled the House over the Mandelson affair. So I'm coming out of the ladies' room, as it is, the toilets there, and she said, you know what, I'm so upset. The public thinks there's a bad whiff about this. They're now questioning the moral compass of the Labour Party, and I'm going to give a rip-roaring speech. I'm so angry. I really feel I've got to say it because I'm talking from the heart and I want to represent the people, and she is a good MP. So it took some guts actually for her to do that, because the whips had been out whipping everybody, which they shouldn't have done, because if you remember, Boris was also going to go before the Privileges Committee, and he did not vote Conservative MPs about whether he'd misled the House, and unanimously he went to the Privileges Committee. So no, they had the whips doing an absolute full, we call it a full job of whipping. So she was very brave to stand up there.
And it's worth saying she was ultimately one of 15 Labour MPs that did vote against the government.
Also there was another about 55 who abstained. So they weren't quite as brave, but they did say, I don't want my name on that list to endorse Starmer.
Absolutely. And speaking of whipping, you are a former deputy chief whip.
Oh, yes.
What's that like?
Right. And what you've got to do as a whip, really, if you're doing it properly, yes, you've got to win people over, but you cannot over-whip. And when I say that, it reminds me, if you over-whip a meringue, it will collapse. If you over-whip a cake, it will collapse. Well, if you over-whip MPs, they won't forgive you for that. And Starmer did the worst thing possible, whipping people for the Privileges Committee vote. And I've seen this before. So there was
So far, there's no ramifications as well for the people that did go against the government.
No, not yet. And people will wish that they had. Abstentions is one thing. The 15 people who vote against, you might say, that's the usual crew. They always vote against. I get that. But talking about overly whipping, we had an instance, or Boris did, and he wanted, it wasn't actually for himself that he whipped all of the MPs. It was for a colleague called Owen Paterson. And people went to him. I did. My husband, Phil Davis, did. Another great MP, Julian Lewis did, said, we don't want to vote for this. We don't agree with voting for this. It's like, I think Philip described it as a circular firing squad that'll come back to haunt you. But we all did, and we all voted, and we all protected Owen Paterson, and it all went horribly wrong. But I'll tell you what MPs say after that. They go, we did not want to do, and we will now never do that for you again. You have burnt your bridges with us. And all that goodwill you had in the bank, Starmer, or Boris at the time, you have not got it anymore. We've gone over the hill one too many times. And with his U-turns where people have felt let down because they've defended him. But that vote, trust me, reminded me just of the Owen Paterson vote, and it was all over. And then to watch PMQs yesterday, where the whips had obviously gone out and said to the backbenchers, you must cheer him from the rafters, and they looked like a terrible lot of toadies saying how wonderful this Labour government was, time and time again, how wonderful it is, and they were being ridiculed. So they'll go, oh, we've got workers' rights, and everybody's shouting, no, unemployment is through the roof because of that. And then they go, oh, we've done the Renters Act, and people go, yeah, rent bills are going to go sky high and accommodation's going to shrink. So every time they shouted what they'd done, everybody was saying, but it's not the reality of what is happening. So that is a very bad whipping project, as they'd call it. And remember, whips work from day to day. A government has to look at long term.
Speaking of long term, hereditary peers had their final day in Parliament yesterday. I thought Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Tory party, put out a really classy tweet just thanking them all. Just to name a few of them, it's the Marquess of Winchester, the Earl of Shrewsbury, the Duke of Wellington. It's a loss to Parliament.
I think this adds into the damage that Starmer has done to our country in less than 2 years. So if you look at it, you're right, hereditary peers all said goodbye yesterday. That was the end of what people would say, yes, they've got it by birthright. But some of those people, whether you look at the Marquess of Winchester, whether you look at the Earl of Shrewsbury, the last battle in the 100-year battle, and that's why his family was put in the house, or the Duke of Wellington, all of these were great historical figures who'd done so much for the country that they were put in there. If you think now who Starmer wants to put in there is, going back to what Emma Lewell said, his pedo pals, Mandelson, that he wants to put in there. So look at the difference. People who've defended our country, families that go back to the 1550s who've kept our country great, and that's who he's putting in there. So people are saying it's shameful what he's doing. So the damage to the country, dismantling our history and heritage. In the 1960s, they said, we'd rather have peers by God than peers by Harold Wilson. And it's the same thing now. We don't want them by Starmer. So he's done that. And think as well, because people say it was a bitter and twisted move by Starmer to get rid of the hereditary peers. They come from a family of people who fought for the country, and those hereditary peers were the ones who saved us from the Chagos Islands. It was the House of Lords that stopped Starmer giving Chagos away and us paying for that. that. It was the House of Lords that stopped the assisted suicide bill, and I will call it assisted suicide and not assisted dying. And it was them who also got rid of the non-crime hate incidents. So those brave, brilliant people he's got rid of. So it was as if he had an axe to grind. But it's not just that. Starmer's also destroyed, hasn't he, our relationship with, the USA that's meant to be our special relationship. So in this instance, I'll say, thank God we do have a royal family and a king who can smooth out the problems that Starmer creates.
Earlier, we mentioned reshuffles, and I want to loop back to that. You have been in the thick of one. Do you think there'll be one after local elections?
I think Starmer is thinking he can survive by doing a reshuffle. There's an element of distraction as well as it is an element of renewal of his team. And sometimes you need reshuffles to say to those people on the backbenches, stick by me because there are opportunities for you. There is a way to progress in my team. I've still got life. I've still got vigour. I've still got energy. But remember, for every person you appoint, you're getting rid of somebody. You're putting them to the backbenches where they can create a lot of trouble.
And some might not always want to move.
Exactly right. And that, which we saw in this Labour team when Ed Miliband refused to move from the Energy Department when he last attempted a reshuffle. But I can tell you, when I was in there with Theresa May thought she was going to move Jeremy Hunt from Health, and he'd been there for 6 years, the longest ever Secretary of State in Health. And he said, no, I don't want to go. I want to finish off. Not in a sort of a belligerent, tantrumy way. He was part way through doing something and he said, I don't want to go. I've got to complete this. So she said yes, which then had implications right the way through. Another Secretary of State thought she could say, well, I don't want to move either. And that was Justine Greening, who was in education at the time. But Theresa May said, no, you've got to. Which ended up Justine not having a job because she didn't want to go to the Department of Work and Pensions. And that's how I became Secretary of State for the Department of Work and Pensions, because there was this sort of log jam, sort of gridlock, sort of people coming forward. So I was meant to go into the Home Office. So I found out afterwards to do immigration. And instead, I became Secretary of State for the Department of Work and Pensions. So note to Starmer. He thinks he's going to shuffle, supposedly, Reeves out. I don't believe he can do that. He's going to have to offer a position. And how is that going to happen? Because he wants Angela in. And what I will say, this is a long overdue reshuffle. That time when Reeves was crying on the front bench for various things that had gone on, that was actually... he was hoping to do a reshuffle then to get her out. Then he couldn't.
So that was the 2nd of July last year. There were tears on the front bench. And that ultimately led to, on the 1st of September last year, Darren Jones, who was the Prime Minister's Chief Secretary, or the Treasury Chief Secretary rather, being moved into Downing Street as Starmer's right-hand man, essentially. Yeah.
So basically, he'd probably promised Darren, you're going to become Chancellor. He was probably already working on that. He wanted Reeves out then. It didn't happen. She cried. He didn't want to be called a misogynist, didn't know what to do, so he didn't do anything. So you've promised somebody something, so you've got to give them something. So that was Darren then moving across and up on the hope that he would then go back and be Chancellor. And he's certainly paid his dues. He has done 8 Mandelson debates that Starmer has ducked and dodged. So he probably thinks he will get that job. But just think of the unhappiness in an already unhappy group. And he has promised, hence Angela Rayner was having a couple of drinks in Stranger's Bar Monday night, supposedly so drunk she smashed into the door, which was supposedly getting repaired the next day. But that's only a coincidence. That isn't because she smashed into it, right? And that's because she thinks she's coming in. All of this is too much sort of tensions, and I don't think it can happen. And what we don't want is Angela Rayner as Chancellor. Please.
Well, we've spoken there a bit about what's going on the left, but on the right side, Nigel Farage appears to have opened the door to a coalition with the Tories. Mm-hmm. For the first time, when that was put to him, he said, let's see. What are your thoughts?
I think you've got to unite the right. I think otherwise, because I'm thinking of the public, what's right for the public, and socialism, as destroying the country. We cannot let socialism win because of what it's doing. Angela Rayner was so cock-a-hoop Monday night in the bar. She was extolling her virtues. She was a socialist and this is what she's going to do. Oh my goodness, we don't want that. If you look at the numbers of Reform and Conservatives, it would absolutely win. Equally, if you look at the number of Greens with Labour, they would win. Now, remember, this was a party. It does make me laugh. Hannah Spencer saying, ew, people drink in Parliament. I would dispute. This is not true that people walk around slosh. This is not true. They have dinners where they're voting, as we were this week, till midnight. So somebody might have had a drink. But what she said was not true. But remember, the irony or the hypocrisy, she's saying you can't have a drink, how pious she is. Yet her party believes in that we'd all be mainlining drugs, which she'd make legal. What a joke. That is and that party is. So unite the right, because my point being Green and Labour would win if they would unite, and it looks like there is going to be that left-wing coalition. So do I see there's an opportunity? Yes. It will be difficult. Yes. It won't be happening now. You're looking at the pollings. Tories have come up a percentage or two to about 18%. Reform has supposedly come down a bit from a high of 31% to about 25%. Let's see where it goes. But for me, uniting of the right is key because we don't want a hard line left-wing government.
We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Esther McVey. And thank you so much to you at home. Please do like, share, subscribe, and hit the hype button. We'll be back tomorrow.